Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday message for April 10th of 2022. Our message today is about the esoteric meaning of Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday, as the Christian church called them. This is a special week in the life of Jesus, as many different events happen during this week. So the week begins with Jesus riding a donkey colt into town, where hundreds of his followers meet him with praise and adulation, waving palms at him and placing palms on the road for him to ride the donkey on. The donkey colt is significant. This colt represents our ego nature, untamed, unbroken, doing its own will and way. When Jesus successfully sat on the unbroken donkey colt through shouting crowds and crowds waving palm branches, it was showing the power of the Christ over a lower, as Fillmore calls it, our animal nature, that would ordinarily buck and try to throw off its rider in fear. And we follow Jesus by allowing the Christ in us to ride over our own ego natures. The Christ within us can tame and bring peace to our wildest egoic fears, angers, jealousies, etc. Christ's power allows us to make breakthroughs where before that we would not have had the courage or ability to do so. Joel Goldsmith writes that there are states and stages of consciousness, and that the beginning stage is like that of the unbroken colt. As we allow the Christ presence into our lives, that untamed egoic part of us calms down and the Christ part of us takes over. As we make the decision to keep on unfolding and progressing, the day will come when we are no longer using our own personal will to live our lives, but we become the beholder of life being lived through us by the Christ within us. All we need to do is learn how to be still and let the still small voice do the work in our lives. After Jesus rode the colt into town, several things happened to him. One being Holy Thursday, the day of the Last Supper. It's the day we celebrate as being the day before Good Friday, although actually that was not true. It's just how we celebrate it. The purpose of that holy day, esoterically, was to exemplify two of the major principles of the spiritual life: humility and benevolence. Let's take the word humility. The true humility of this holy day applied to spiritual living means the acknowledgement that I of my own self am nothing. The Father within me is all. It's purely a relationship between me and God. And humility means that I acknowledge every day in every way that I of my own self am nothing. I of my own self can do nothing. The Father is the life of my being. And if you want to change that word Father to source, you could just say the source within me, the divine presence within me constitutes my wisdom or my intelligence or my strength or my health or my prosperity. Whatever it is that I may claim as a quality, it isn't mine at all. It's the activity of a spiritual presence which functions me. It created me as this individual in the beginning. It formed for me this body, this mind, this life. And it functions as my health, my intelligence, my relationship with everyone on earth. And I am only humble in the degree that I actually know that this is true. Only in the degree that I realize that there is a spirit in me, or that I realize that he that is within me is greater than he that is in the world, or he performs that which is given me to do. That is being humble. That's true humility. The real function of this holy day of old was that there might be a complete day of rest, of contemplation, of meditation on just these two subjects, humility and benevolence. And of course, humility must come first, because without it, there can be no correct sense or spiritual sense of benevolence. When we speak of benevolence, the first thing you think about is what you will be giving from your money, your time to someone or something else. Esoterically speaking, however, you begin to understand that it in its true light, and you then know that you have never given anything of yours to anyone. You've never been charitable, benevolent, nor have you ever given anything to anyone, anything that was yours. Because now you understand that whatever it is that you have is yours by the grace of God. And whatever that you give or share or bestow, you do these things also by the grace of God. And you are but the instrument through which God functions. And if you carry that one step further, you really begin to understand that whether it's the cattle on 1,000 hills that Jesus talks about, that you're giving away, or gold, or, our money, you learn through really looking at this day, this Holy Thursday, that none of these things are yours. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And you can be just as generous with it as you want to be, as long as you recognize that this I have is mine by the grace of God, and it's mine to share, to use. To live spiritually means actually to know what you're doing and to know why you're doing it. Have an understanding of how religious laws came into being and what their function is, what their purpose is, and why they're taught. These holy days performed a function in that they taught us lessons, principles of life, which we were expected to adopt into our lives and live by. If we do not live the life of humility, we're really not living the life of God. If we do not live the life of benevolence, then we're living a physical life only, and we're not connected with our real spiritual existence. And after the Last Supper, Jesus retired to the garden where he was arrested by the soldiers. He then went to trial, was found guilty, and was taken to be crucified. Spiritually speaking, we don't celebrate the death of Jesus, nor do we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus as a physical form. The purpose in the lesson of the death of Jesus and his resurrection, since he is the way shower, is to show us the way to find life eternal, and that way is by means of the death of our personal sense. We too are supposed to die to our personal sense of life and to be resurrected from that tomb. In other words, our personal sense of life is like a tomb in which we're buried. We are supposed to die to the belief that I am something, that I have a life of my own, a mind of my own, a soul of my own, a way and a will of my own. We're supposed to die to the belief that we have a possession of our own, or any virtue, any life, any being, any harmony, or any success of our own. So that in the resurrection, we come to the realization that there is that within us that can rise out of the personal sense and walk this earth as a spiritual being, God-fed, God-directed, God-wise, God-maintained, and God-sustained. Good Friday is a time in which we should contemplate and meditate upon the inner meaning. We can, of course, use the Master Christ Jesus to find how he brought about the death of personal sense and how he avoided having problems, even when he had the serious problem of being faced with betrayal and death. How not by considering it a personal affliction, a personal problem, he was able to rise above it. What he told his disciples was, "To this end I was born." Therefore, to him, this, meaning the crucifixion, was not a problem. Jesus was trying to tell them that he had God, source, Father, within. And because he has source, he can share infinity with everyone who lacks, whether it's water or wine or bread or meat. It made no difference what it was. He had it to share. And at the end, he had God sustaining him on the cross during his time of that inner death. He's always reminding us, I can of my own self do nothing. And then you see the principle of Good Friday, of the crucifixion of personal selfhood, personal sense. Crucifixion of the belief that we of ourselves have quantities or qualities of good. And then comes the resurrection and the realization that I am nothing, but I can give you all. And why? Because it's the Father within me that does the works. And then, of course, Jesus passes away on the cross. He's taken to the tomb, laid there. The stone is rolled over the cover. And then it comes to what the Christian churches call Holy Saturday. In most churches, instead of a holiday or holy day, what we really have is another time of contemplation of another spiritual principle of life. Considering the first disciples' experience of Holy Saturday gives us a meaning for the day. First, they waited. Saturday was the Sabbath. Remember, they were Jewish and Saturday is their holy day. They could not finish, tending to Jesus's body for entombment. Because of this, they probably felt, an incompleteness in dealing with the body of Jesus. They probably went over and over events, trying to make sense of all the stuff that had happened. Jesus was dead. Could this really be the end of him? Yes, he had predicted he would rise on the third day. But the disciples, in their grief, either forgot the problem, or that promise, or no longer believed it, and perhaps never really understood it anyway. However, metaphysically, esoterically speaking, that middle day was not just the day that Jesus lay dead in the tomb. This was the time that Jesus's body went through a transformation from the physical to the spiritual, where his physical body was transformed into a body of light. Remember, after coming out of the tomb, he told those who saw him not to touch him, as he was not in his physical body, but was in the body of the Christ, a body of light that could not be disturbed as yet. And this day represents the principle of self-renunciation, the principle of crucifixion, in which we have brought to light the nothingness of our human selfhood. We then reveal the allness and immortality and eternality of our being, because I and the Father are one, and all that the Father has is mine. What this time represents is our taking time away from everything and everyone around us. Spend time alone, fully one with Source. then having had died to that false sense of self, our true self comes out of that tomb of the little self and walks this earth free, free and infinite and immortal and eternal, full of God being, full of the source, full of being the Christ. As Paul stated, I live, not yet I, Christ lives my life. When the transition has been made from a person who is identified with the physical realm to one who has their life in the Christ self of their being, then you'll find the readiness for the ascension which is a rising above every material tie in this world. There's a spiritual tie that unites us because we have risen above the belief that we have to be members of one particular human family or one racial family or one religious family or one national family in order to be spiritually of one household. In the ascension of your personal being, you break every material law and find that you have your own being in your Christ self. And you're now being fed from source itself. With that connection, there is no limit to the spiritual demonstrations that we can make once we thoroughly allow that personal sense of self die and pass away. So for the rest of this week, I invite you to contemplate the meaning of the Last Supper, the time of humility and benevolence, the time of Good Friday, where we are willing to put all that we are or think we are up for a crucifixion of source within our own being. The time of letting go of all that we think we are, all that we think we have, all that we think we have to do in life. And finally, the time of Holy Saturday, the time where we go within to the center of our being, away from everyone and everything, to fully allow the Christ of our own being to come forth in our personal life, so that we may share the beauty, the prosperity, the peace, the joy, and more of Source with the world. So much love, everyone. May this week be one of great revelations, great expansion, great love for all of you. God bless everyone. Have a beautiful week and happy Easter. Take care.